Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to the Goodman Podcast. Today, I have my friend Dan, somebody I really respect and look forward to today actually speaking to him because he is a guy with so much experience and knowledge about different subjects. I mean, I must say, when I play paddle with him on Fridays, I'm just blown away by the depth of knowledge he has about literally any topic you pick up under the sun. So, Dan, firstly, welcome. Tell us who is Dan. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living.
Yeah, it's a great opening question because Dan's always evolving, and it's definitely a rule that I live by. That you want to be embarrassed by the person you were 12 months ago. So I've been in this entrepreneurial journey for 20 years, 22 years, and I've just been on a continuous pursuit to identify what is the magic bullet that helps people achieve continuous growth. And of course, that all started with the health and fitness industry. But of course, a big part of that is also understanding the mindset and how the brain works so that we can overcome challenges, we can have breakthroughs, we can have clarity and a purpose and those goals, and really formulate some systems that are very simple for easy for people to apply into their own journey, regardless of their goal. So that still excites me every single day. And that is something that I follow in my pursuit of health, happiness, and success.
That's fantastic, Dan, and thank you for the introduction. I must say I'm only blown away by what we're going to be we're talking about in a few seconds. But we touched upon the idea of growth. You talked about sort of having a sort of a way to think about your today versus comparing to the last year or the previous years. Um, the challenge with that is that obviously as entrepreneurs we are so driven to get success for not only ourselves but our teams as well that sometimes there's a thing called work-life balance which kind of goes completely off track. How do you manage to keep it always looking fantastic and smiley and ready to kind of go for the day?
Yeah, another great question. It's I think the solution is simple, but the process is a little complex, right? There's lots of different variables in that definition of balance or happiness or what is important for each individual. And and of course, when I start looking at growth, if we start looking at an evolutionary perspective, growth happens through adaptation. And so we need to create an environment that forces us to adapt to be able to improve. All right. So whether it's with training, we need to push ourselves beyond where we currently are so that the body is forced to adapt and get stronger. The same thing with knowledge. If we pursue knowledge or excellence or mastery in a particular area, we need to invest time into that domain to expand that resource, right? Knowledge, data is information. So I fell in love with the process. And this link towards growth for any individual, there's definitely a magic spectrum of change or discomfort or challenge that allows us to grow. So if we can find that magic spot, which just stretches us beyond our comfort zone, but we can gather fast feedback, that's the magic link. Because if we get fast feedback, we get some response that informs us that we're heading in the right direction. That motivates us to then continue. And then our brain starts thinking, what's next? Great, it's working. Oh, I like this feeling. I like this feedback. I feel I'm making progress. And then when we start on focusing on the present, then we're able to eliminate variables that are not relevant. So if there's areas in the past that we are dwelling on, well, they're not relevant to who we are today. And if there are things that haven't happened yet in the future, well, we're stressing ourselves over things that probably will never happen. So it allows us to come back to this present moment and break it down and look at one thing at a time. What's my priority? What's going to move the needle? And where do I need to project my focus and attention right now? So that's what keeps me balanced, right?
I hear
Focusing
you.
on the present.
I hear you. I mean, a lot of golden nuggets there, Dan, in terms of what should be the the mindset, the focus on getting feedback, for example. I often think about the 20-year younger version of myself. One thing which I struggle with in what you just mentioned is how to prioritize what's important for me. What is that, for example, what should be done today versus like yesterday versus the next 5 minutes or 1 hour or next week. How do you go about helping perhaps yourself, your customers to prioritize or have a mindset which is kind of saying, don't panic, let's prioritize this based on maybe some mindset or methodology you might have, for instance?
So the short answer is clarity.
Hmm.
And if we look at, we'll say, procrastination or feeling
Hmm.
overwhelmed, right? There's
Hmm.
always an emotional response. And if you can tap into that feeling of being stressed or overwhelmed, that's your first sign to take action. And that action is just to stop and step back. Okay. So when there's lots of variables involved, and if you take the time, I do a lot of what I call brain dumps.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that gives you an opportunity to get all this information and these thoughts and variables out of your brain and onto paper so it becomes visual. From that start point, you start to break down, categorize, identify what's important, what's relevant to an outcome that you're pursuing. And then you start to simplify the process and narrow down what you need to focus on. So when there's lots going on, a general brain dump is really powerful. And then once you're on track, then you need more consistent anchors that allow you to just reset and review where you're at in life, what those priorities need to be. So I do what I call 4 power questions, and they are my daily anchor that takes me literally 2 or 3 minutes to review what did I learn today? What did I do well? What could I do better? And what are my 3 priorities for tomorrow? So that keeps me grounded on a daily basis. And then every Sunday, I do what I call strategic Sundays, and I will project and review from the week that's been, reassess where I'm at, and then project those priorities for the week ahead.
That's phenomenal. Wow. I must say, something I'm not doing at all at the moment, I really should be looking at as well. So I'm guessing these 4 power questions you do at the end in the evening when you're about to hit the sack, for example. How much time do you spend on these four power questions, for example?
2 or 3 minutes,
Okay.
because I'm
And
far
does
enough ahead that that's already been quite identified and refined. So it's just fast feedback. And I wouldn't do it right before bed because that means
Mhm.
your brain is still active before sleep. So somewhere by the end of the day, some downtime where you still have an hour or two before you sleep, because a lot of people have trouble sleeping or they're overthinking that prevents them from having quality sleep. So when you've checked in with yourself and you've dealt with any thoughts that you have and you've identified your priorities for tomorrow, the plan has been set. So then you train your brain that if thoughts do enter, you're like, that's for tomorrow. And you actually guide and navigate your thoughts and train your unconscious mind how to behave. It needs instructions.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I must say, sleep has been a challenge for me for many years. It's gone a bit better last year. This time I stopped drinking coffee, so it's been a little better. I've been able to sleep better. But I would love to hear: is there anything else you do to sleep? Sleep well? Do you still sleep at a particular time? For example, my daughter goes to bed at 7:30 p.m. I wish I was as disciplined as her and go to bed early as well. But unfortunately, some days I'm sleeping at like 10 p.m. Sometimes I'm sleeping at like 1 o'clock because I went to an event and came back. How do you manage your sleep? What time do you go to bed?
So I have a pumpkin time. It's a bit of a Cinderella. I need lights out latest by 12. Um, And I do try and bring that back a little bit earlier when I can. So it's good to have routine, definitely, but being in a state where you can be a little bit flexible as well gives you more bandwidth to adapt to an environment, right? And I think that's a really important key point. So to have those systems in place that you follow, or what I call rules of engagement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we hear a lot about morning routines. So it's not just about a sleep priming routine before sleep. I always ask people, when does your morning routine start?
Mm.
And people will go, well, I'm up at 6:30 or 7. However, the answer is your morning routine starts the night before. So
Interesting.
you start priming intentional action for the following day. So morning is definitely about getting outside, getting sunlight. I get some isometrics and some movement to activate the nervous system. And so when you can get sunlight in early, you're more likely to be able to fall into a more circadian based rhythm of sleep.
Understand. I mean, this is really interesting that actually the routine for the morning is not in the morning, but actually the night before, and having that intention in place is so important. And I feel that is with everything we do in life, isn't it? As people who are, as leaders, we are meant to have intentions. We're meant to have a way we drive our companies. Many of us still sort of are leaders, but we still struggle with kind of having a routine because because we have to be flexible. So you talked about being flexible as well, and how we should be able to maneuver these things. The issue with all of this is that obviously when we don't follow the patterns, we don't follow our routines, we don't sleep on time, we wake up because we didn't sleep really well last night. That leads to a feeling of stress. We can feel stress not only from our routines, but also we're looking at these different screens. I probably have four screens in front of me right now. I've got my iPad, I've got my phone, I've got my laptop here, and suddenly I get popping messages from WhatsApp, for example. I get an email coming in the same time as well. How do you suggest one should go about stress management? What is the optimal state? Do you believe in less screen time or optimized screen time? How would you suggest we're going to go about stress management and the life we live as busy people?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. Uh, Having structure and what I call boundaries. So when you set those rules in place about how you block time and I say that the calendar is king.
Hmm.
And I use my calendar to time block activities, priorities, as well as freedom time. Freedom time might give me some time to switch off, be away from tech, do other things that are not related to the business or meetings. And so it's very important to have planned time to disengage. All right,
Yeah.
that's the first part. So calendar is king for me. The other important factor is that stress is good. It's part of growth, it's part of adaptation. And so we can reframe what stress means. For most part, it's overwhelm, multitasking. And so the response we get when we are feeling stressed or overwhelmed is, for many people, it's that feeling in the chest of being anxious or stressed or overwhelmed. That is the moment to intercept and assess what's going on, right? Because we can't
Yeah.
eliminate stress, but we can reframe it and attach different meaning, and we can take action and pivot on it. So to intercept any particular moment in time, assess those variables, put them into context, and kind of reset back on what is my priority. Helps you stay engaged and present, all right? Coming back to the present moment, what are my priorities? what's really important. And so for me, calendar is king. And that is where I manage time and attention. It allows me to recalibrate, focus on priorities, make sure I stay on task. Because for the most part, stress is good. It's a feedback mechanism. And if we were all to actually define stress, we would all have a different definition and different activities that make us feel stressed or overwhelmed. For the most part, it's simply overthinking, multitasking, and trying to do too many things at the same time. So if we can develop the ability to intercept that feeling of stress or anxiety or overwhelm and use that as an opportunity to then stop and reassess why we're feeling like that, what am I doing or what am I not doing, it allows us to then recalibrate, focus on the present, identify the priority task of what is important right now. That's it, because nothing else matters. And that just brings such a state of calm and be like, okay, I'm back in control. Focus on one thing at a time. All right, very powerful.
Absolutely love it. It's one thing you remind me of is the power of being in the present time. Most of us are either planning for the future or sort of thinking about the past and what's gone either really well or terribly for us. And that I feel is the biggest cause of stress in my life. So just unpacking that for us, Dan, that was really powerful and really helped me to kind of think about what is stress in my life, whether it's work or personal life, for example.
100%. And if we keep it super simple, if we look at noise, data, information, clutter, it's also, there are many elements, including our environment. So if we're chasing deadlines or schedules or tasks, it means we're probably not very organized and clear on what we need to be doing. And that could be from the setup of your working environments to your calendar and appointments, just being organized. And that in itself allows you to be very calm, intentional, and less reactive. So again, that process of being able to access emotional stress is the feedback to say, okay, where am I disorganized? What could I do better? Where am I being distracted? Where is my attention being pulled away from? And bring it back onto those areas.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Well, saying that about the stress and how to manage stress, one of the challenges which we have to overcome is that we will have issues in our business which is not linked to our lives, our doing. Perhaps it's the economy. During COVID times, we were all going through tons of stress because there was the unknown. No one has been through a pandemic in our lives, so we had no idea what to kind of expect from it. And at that point, obviously, EO entrepreneurs organization was a very helpful part to help me get to the next step. In fact, that's the time I actually scaled up quite a bit as a company and as a person. The question I have around that is when things come into our lives which are not in our control, we need some sort of a resilience mindset or sort of a way to kind of really be ready to tackle the situation and say, you know what, I'm going to go for it anyway. How do you train yourself or your clients, Dan, to have that resilience as baked into their DNA pretty much?
Yeah, another great question. And one of those rules of engagement, one of those rules that I live by and I share with clients is focus on controllables. So again, you get to eliminate the things that are out of your control and you focus on the things that are within your control.
Understood. And do we feel that sometimes things are not in our control can cause challenges for us? And is there a way we can have a, let me give you an example, just to explain what I'm going to say. So when you think about, for instance, competition, they might be growing in a particular market, and you want to grow in the similar market as well. But perhaps the company is not in that space, and they have to grow. They have to raise money for that. For instance, they have to go and do some additional actions, but that will lead to growth in the company, the founding team, the management. Is there a way we can plan our success by almost sort of having a vision for ourselves, or do you think that it's more about just being prepared, and if you're lucky, we'll find a way in that journey of ours?
There's definitely, I think it's around the skills that you develop, whether they're on an emotional level or an intelligence level, that allow you to be better prepared for the unpreparable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these skills around EQ and being able to control your emotional states are very powerful in these kind of situations. So when I talk about strategy, right, business strategy, any plan in place to achieve a particular outcome, I think what correlates with focusing on controllables is resourcefulness. So again, being able to intercept a challenging moment, but not being emotionally charged by it, and being able to step back and look objectively without emotion helps you to then be resourceful to identify opportunities and pathways of what to do next. All right. So resourcefulness in itself is a skill set, but be able to do this without emotion. So where they're not driven by the anxiety or the negative emotional states, and always be in a neutral state. Right. So these two go together. Right. And resourcefulness allows you to establish the pathway forward, one step at a time.
That's really interesting. I was at a conference recently where I heard about sort of being resourceful and growth. That they apparently go hand in hand. So one, if one is resourceful, they can find opportunities to grow everything around them. That in itself something was an anxiety for people I know, like, oh my god, to grow again. Because I read somewhere that if you're not growing, you aren't shrinking. Actually, you're just dying. And that's, it was like, wow, okay, that's a bit scary. And I was like, oh, that sounds like, it's like a lot of challenges for the founders, the growth teams in a company, or even, for example, in organizations as well. So it's always like kind of that growth mindset is super important. I wonder, in your own journey, Dan, or how you kind of go about coaching people, perhaps. What are your thoughts on growth mindset? Do you feel that that is an important skill for us to have, or is that it's an optional skill potentially, optional mindset to have as individuals?
I think with the word mindset itself is very broad, very generic. It's like exercise. Yes, I need to exercise. Well, what type of exercise, frequency, intensity, time and type, for what purpose? And so mindset, yes, is important to understand and have a positive growth mindset. But how we actually achieve that requires specific tools, systems, knowledge to understand how to unpack that and how to apply, and then how to automate, right? So automation and it being just part of your present state or your being comes through repetition. So all of it becomes very, based on your intuition. So it's definitely a skill that is essential. And I can give an example where if we understand that to grow, we need to be beyond our comfort zone, for example, right? Or we need to be in unfamiliar territory. We need to go beyond our current state. Then we know that anxiety or stress that it brings is good stress. So we can reframe and attach a meaning that this feeling is actually essential to grow. So now we can build confidence and be comfortable in that state of discomfort or challenge. Ah. So if we start looking at getting into the zone or getting into flow states, there are critical areas that are part of being able to access flow states. And one of them is challenge. One of them is overwhelm, stress, anxiety, curiosity, uncertainty. And these are all parts of growth. So if you can actually gamify and enjoy the process because you've assessed the risk. Remember, the anxiety and the stress takes place because the unconscious mind wants to keep us safe and stable, wants us to keep stay the same.
Yeah, makes a lot of
So
sense.
if we've assessed that there is no major risk, it's just work or opportunity or unfamiliar, okay, now you can really strive and engage and gamify the process of growth or being in unfamiliar ground.
I hear you. It makes a lot
If
of
that
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think one thing just to go deeper into that. You talk about stress as a mechanism to sort of grow, and it's actually a positive thing as well. People often think about it as like, oh my God, that's challenging. That's horrible to have stress. Oh my God, I'm stressed. But actually, this actually a tool can be gamified. Question I want to ask is there a way to switch it on and off more like a tap? Is there a way you can do that as well? And if so, is there some sort of framework which you use or any sort of process you use to almost like switch on when you need to kind of really pump yourself and then turn it off when you're done for the day or time is, the task is achieved?
There's a really powerful framework around identity, and you when you achieve a certain level of awareness or mastery around the different identities that we have, it allows you to step into a different persona with a different skill set, with a different um, context to deliver a certain outcome. And to help achieve those, you can use what we call anchors, and they might be things that remind. So, for example, this itself is an anchor. When I'm on coaching calls, I only use this mug because it reinforces a certain identity related to high levels of performance. Now, some people use, especially when they need to switch between, say, a work identity where they're busy and working and focused, and then family time. So, one client, for example, before he gets out of the car at the end of the day, he switched off any music. He uses that time to kind of reset and channel his focus on family, getting into that identity. And then he puts on a bracelet that his daughter made for him. So that was the anchor that allows him to step into that family, dad, fatherly identity. So without distraction, focused, intentional time and attention just on family when he gets home. When he's done his 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that's off, and he can step into a different role, a different identity. If you're
Yeah,
preparing for a presentation or to go and speak on stage, again, different identities. And there will be different anchors or triggers that you can create into a strategy or framework that allow you to enter those states.
yeah.
It's it's powerful when you start to access it and apply it.
Understood. Makes a lot of sense. And I love the way the example you give of the bracelet. People underestimate these triggers, which lead to certain changes in our mindset. I've actually started to work outside my home office because I feel like my environment at home should be used more for family time and not for work. So today's exception because we did have a meeting in the area where I am, where I stay. But usually I go to the office and work from there because it's much better to kind of segregate the two parts. So I can be a dad, a husband, at the same time a business owner and do my thing as well. So yeah, absolutely agree with that. Really, really good share there. Thank you for that, Dan.
So when you are juggling different roles, you're being pulled left, right, and center. Again, you're able to intercept, detach, and shift.
That's amazing.
You
That's
got it.
amazing. And obviously, Dan, these frameworks, these habits, these triggers, this is part of, I'm guessing, your continuous learning mindset. You obviously constantly learning with these things. How do you go about this learning process? Do you set aside some time to do it, or is this part of your daily journey, or are you sort of a fitness, sort of podcast in the ears kind of person? How do you go about learning, and how do you allocate time for it?
I definitely make time. It's planned, but it would also be part of my disengagement time, right? Learning in a particular area that is relevant to where I am at any particular point in time. Or maybe it's an area based on a client's needs that I feel that I need to explore further and understand further or learn more techniques to help support them. So there's always a purpose. It's not random. And when we start looking at a motivation perspective, we start looking at dopamine. When is dopamine released? It's when our brain is identifying patterns, right? Seeking that, connecting the dots. So that in itself encourages me and excites me to dive deeper into certain topics that I think are going to have a powerful impact either on myself in my learning or in clients, right? Even my staff, because even with EQ and emotional intelligence and being in control of our emotional states is super important to be able to stay calm so that we can tackle solutions.
This learning mindset is what separates the the boys from the men in many ways. It really is what separates the growing mindset person to go succeed as others who are sort of in that zone of like implementing without thinking or not having the time, as you mentioned earlier, to learn and grow. And obviously that applies to every part of our life, isn't it? Our business, our personal, our family. One thing you mentioned about your staff, I'd love to hear from you about how do you see your work and your role at work? Is it more of I mean, obviously you're a company founder, Dan. So how do you see your staff? Are you think of yourself more as a coach, or do you see yourself more as an implementer? How do you see yourself in business?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely evolved, especially the last probably 5 to 10 years, more into a mentor role. And so the coaching skills that I've developed, I apply in that role. So rather than telling people or teaching people, it really is around asking questions to help them formulate and identify their own path or direction or decision that they need to make. And whether that's related to their personal life or a client result, you're teaching people the tools to think for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's certainly very powerful. And how I guess, bridged the difference between organizational excellence and personal excellence is that everything is communicated from the perspective that what is the benefit for them to follow this process. Have you heard of the acronym WIFM?
Rings a bell, but I don't know if I know the yeah. What is it? Educators,
All
yeah.
right. So WIFM is what's in it for me. So you're being told to do something. Well, why should I? What is the benefit for me? Why should I implement what you're asking me to do?
I love it.
And so when it's presented in a way that it's going to make their life more simple, they'll spend less time doing that task, or it's going to lead to a better client experience or outcome, which is going to lead to higher client retention, higher satisfaction, more consistent income, greater opportunities to grow and be successful in life. The coin drops and they go, yeah, I want that. So I'm going to implement and see how that benefits me.
I love Vipim. Vifim. I can't pronounce it
With
properly.
him. Yeah, what's in it
Vifim.
for me?
Vifim. I'm going to steal that straight away, and I'm going to implementing that in my company. I love Vifim. That's my new thing after JFDI. Vifim. I love it. Great, Dan. This has been awesome. I'm going to jump into the last question. And obviously, the reason why we are here together today is because we kind of met through a common interest, and the interest was to grow and learn. And a big part of my journey has been the EO journey, the entrepreneurs organization journey. Start from EO London, then as a founding member of EO Bangkok. Now, I know you're still new to the EO journey, but I see you as really embodying the core values of EO. So tell me, Dan, has EO made an impact on your life so far? If so, in what way, and why should people even think about EO as a possible option in their business journey, as it were?
So I think the first thing is that being an expat and as an entrepreneur, there are very few quality networking groups to be involved with. Whether it's because it's quite transient, and I just found that with EO, it's just such an incredible, dynamic, humble group of people who are on the same page. Of course, they're motivated to make an impact and grow their business, and focused on growth, contribution, learning, continuous learning, and it's just a great opportunity to really connect with like-minded people. I know it sounds a little bit cliche. For me as well, it's such a learning experience to hear from other people's journeys and what they're doing. And it definitely inspires me to raise my game, right? To raise my bar, raise my standards, and continue to pursue, big impact and big goals. So it's been an incredible journey so far.
Phenomenal. Dan, what you shared with us today is just an example of the diversity and the mindset of people I've been lucky to talk to. I think, Dan, in many ways, I look up to you when it comes to anything to do with mindset. The other day we just like just the advice you gave me about how to play paddle properly, for instance, and I've been thinking about that quite a bit. So I'm really humbled that you came to the podcast today and accepted our invitation, but also to share your knowledge with us and the audience. I know a lot of people have a ton of value from this podcast. But Dan, they wanted to connect with you or find you. Where can they locate you, as it were, in the virtual world or the cloud world we live in today?
That's all right. Well, the easiest thing is through the website, which is danremon.com. On Facebook, I have my page, which is facebook.com/Daniel Remon. You can also check out my audio cast, which is called The 2-Minute Coach. So again, an extension of making fast, small, easy change to be able to pivot quickly. And you can go to number 2minutecoach.com.
I love it, Dan. Thank you once again, Dan, for being on the Goodman Podcast. Lovely to have you on, and thank you for inspiring me and our audience today. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.